series available to stream exclusively on Disney+.
Time for the latest now with the ITV Lunchtime News. Urgent investigations into claims Russia has used chemical weapons in Mariupol. Western intelligence believes Putin has a deadline to capture the port city so he can focus his battle elsewhere in Ukraine. Also ahead, 30 more fines issued over lockdown parties at Downing Street and Whitehall. The Tory MP Crispin Blunt apologises after defending a colleague convicted of sexual assault.
How do I get that off?
Flights cancelled, the call for the government to fix the travel chaos at airports. Plus, why Ed Sheeran swapped the stadium for a boozy pub sing-along in Birmingham. This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hussain. Good afternoon. The UK and the US are investigating whether Russia has used chemical weapons in its battle to
How do I get it off?
the port of Mariupol. Western officials think Vladimir Putin wants to bring about the fall of the city to free up troops for the fight in the Donbass region. Here, the Armed Forces Minister says if the reports of a chemical drone attack are true, there would be a response from the UK and its allies, and all options are on the table. We'll be live in the capital Kyiv shortly with our correspondent Peter Smith. First, with the latest, here's Rhys Williams.
The destruction of
You've got through it, have you?
after 6 weeks of intense
Right, well, how's that help?
and artillery, now a claim that chemical weapons have been used. Ukraine's Azov battalion, which have been heavily involved in fighting in Mariupol and has strong ties to the far right, claims 3 people suffered from shortness of breath and irregular muscle movements after a Russian drone dropped chemicals. The claim is yet to be verified, but came after a Russia-allied separatist official in Donetsk threatened to smoke out the Ukrainian defenders of a steel mill on Russian state TV.
Today, the occupiers issue a new statement which testifies to their preparation for a new stage of terror against Ukraine and our defenders. One of the mouthpieces of the occupiers stated that they could use chemical weapons against the defenders of Mariupol. We take this as seriously as possible.
Earlier today, President Vladimir Putin described Russia's military objectives in Ukraine as noble, as an appearance in a space center in the Russian Far East with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. The appearance came as the UK government warned that Putin would be held to account for any verified use of chemical weapons.
Attributing whether or not this happened is a real priority right now, so that if necessary, a response can be made. But I'm confident in our intelligence capabilities and in the relationship we have with the Ukrainian government. But it's important to say that at the moment, neither the Ukrainians nor any major intelligence agency in the West are able to confirm that chemical weapons have been used.
This seems to be very much out of the Russian playbook that they seem to have taken from Syria when attacking in built-up areas. When you get stuck with conventional weapons, you go to unconventional weapons. The UK MOD suggested only yesterday that the Russians might use white phosphorus, and to hear overnight that potentially a chemical attack has occurred had some detailed evidence.
In Kharkiv, the Ukrainian officials have warned people to stay away from what they say are hundreds of landmines being dropped on the city. The terror for residents continues as this brutal war rages on. Chris Williams, ITV News.
Let's go live now to Ukraine and join our correspondent Peter Smith in the capital, Kyiv. When do you think we might know if the reports, these claims, these allegations are true?
Well, the British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is saying that the UK is looking at this and will hold it to account. The Armed Forces Minister saying that they're looking at it urgently and all options are on the table. When asked more specifically what does that mean, the answer was they don't want to be too prescriptive, but the message from the UK to Russia was clear: don't test us on this. Of course, the UK has experience with allegedly Russian chemical weapons being used on British soil in Novichok, and previously to that there was the plutonium. But this is more difficult to get to the bottom of, because in the UK we had chemical labs to test what happened. Mariupol is a city under siege. I've actually spoken this morning with an Azov battalion fighter in Mariupol, is telling us that they have been treating the injured and they're trying to get samples out to find out exactly what gas was used, but that's very difficult at this point in time because they can't get.
If you're going to eat this, I'm going to take it off you.
This was a chemical attack. It wasn't something that happened accidentally.
Don't eat it.
White smoke was being released from canisters that were dropped from drones above.
What more, Peter, can you tell us about this expectation that Russia is going to move its troops to attack the eastern side of the country?
We know that the Russians are building up their troops in the east of Ukraine. Those manoeuvres have already taken place. Satellite imagery showing tanks getting into position. We expect that that's going to happen imminently. There were reports this morning of troop manoeuvres in the Donbass region already. But what we're seeing from these chemical attacks is frightening. We're hearing reports of people fainting, having respiratory problems, blackouts, and that is certainly an escalation. We've already seen utter devastation in the allegations of civilian atrocities from conventional weapons, bombs and bullets, artillery shells doing enough damage. So given what we've seen already from the areas that Russia has retreated from, we can only imagine what horrors are hidden behind Putin's lines in areas in the east like Mariupol.
Peter Smith, thank you very much for that update. Thank you. Here, the Metropolitan Police has issued more fines to those who broke lockdown rules by partying at Downing Street and Whitehall. 30 more referrals have been announced today, bringing the current total to 50, but the Force says the investigation is continuing. The Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey said the fines expose the shocking scale of criminality in Boris Johnson's number 10. To our deputy political editor Anushka Asthana in Downing Street, take us through the details today.
Well, we have got these extra 30 fines that brings the total to 50. The reaction inside Downing Street has been pretty muted, as it has been throughout. They're not going to comment on individual names, apart from two: Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, and the Cabinet Secretary, Simon Case. And as we understand it, neither of them are among these latest rounds of fines. Sources suggest to me they don't think Simon Case will get one, but they obviously can't be sure at this stage. Politically speaking, the Prime Minister will be feeling more confident because although there are some Tory MPs I speak to who still have letters of no confidence
sign of how dreadful and awful this case has been is that the judge's voice was breaking as she thanked jurors inside Birmingham Crown Court today, and several of the jurors were weeping as they returned their verdicts in this case. Alicia Watson, the mother of Kamani Watson Darby, has been found guilty of causing or allowing the death of her son, and her partner, Nathaniel Pope, has been found guilty of Kamani's murder. The family lived in a flat in West Bromwich, where on the afternoon of the 5th of June 2018, paramedics were called to the flat where they found Kamani, 3 years old, lifeless and unresponsive. He was taken to hospital where he died just over an hour later. A forensic pathologist told jurors here that when examining Kamani's body, he found evidence of sustained and repeated assaults in the form of bruises and multiple rib fractures on the toddler. Those were caused in the weeks and months up to Kamani's death. Today, his mother has been found guilty of causing or allowing his death, and her partner, Nathaniel Hope, found guilty of his murder, and they'll both be sentenced next month.
Ali Pitts, thank you. The Conservative MP Crispin Blunt has apologised this morning after being criticised for defending a convicted sex offender. The offender in question was the Wakefield MP, Imran Ahmed Khan, who was found guilty yesterday of assaulting a 15-year-old boy. Blunt said Khan was a victim of a dreadful miscarriage of justice. With the details, here's our political correspondent, Libby Vina.
The jury decided he was guilty of sexual assault.
Any word for your victim, Mr. Khan? Are you going to resign, Mr. Khan?
But this fellow Conservative MP and former Justice Minister thought otherwise, taking to Twitter to express his indignation at the verdict. He said, "I am utterly appalled and distraught at the dreadful miscarriage of justice that has befallen my friend and colleague Imran Ahmed Khan, MP for Wakefield, since December 2019. The conduct of this case relied on lazy tropes about LGBT people that we might have thought we had put behind us decades ago." Many colleagues were shocked. The Tory party issuing a statement rejecting the comments. Today he backtracked, saying on Twitter, "On reflection, I have decided to retract my statement defending Imran Ahmed Khan. I am sorry that my defence of him has been a cause of significant upset and concern, not least to victims of sexual offences. It was not my intention to do this. To be clear, I do not condone any form of abuse." Ministers distanced themselves from his earlier remarks.
I just want to make it very clear that Crispin for himself doesn't speak for the government or the Conservative Party. We respect the judgment of the court, and Imran Ahmed Khan will be sentenced by the court in due course, and if he chooses to appeal, that's his business, but the court has made its judgment and the government respects that.
One Labour MP says Crispin Blunt should have the whip removed.
To come out and to attack the court, to question the judgment of the jury, and to suggest that there's not been a fair trial, when there hasn't even been an appeal process or even a sentencing yet, just seems extraordinary.
I want to sell my
Crispin
own
has made a
coat,
terrible,
though I
terrible
don't want
mistake
to.
here, and I hope he's learnt a lesson from it.
He has now resigned as chair of the all-party group on LGBT rights, something a number of MPs had been calling for. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
Still to come this lunchtime, China eases its tough lockdown in Shanghai. Plus, pool and pints at a pub with Ed. First, the boss of EasyJet says flights are being cancelled because of delays in processing security checks for new recruits. The chief executive says the cancellations are due to staff being off with COVID and government delays in vetting new workers. Labour says people are facing travel chaos, and there's a warning that if the staff shortages continue, it could impact summer holidays too. Martha Fairley is at Gatwick Airport. What's the latest, Martha?
Well, thousands of EasyJet passengers hoping for an Easter getaway have had to rearrange their travel plans over the past few days because said that while some of this is down to staff sickness through COVID, they're also waiting for around 100 new staff to be vetted by the government and given security clearance before they can start work. He says there's currently a 3-week delay on cabin crew getting their IDs, and if that had been on time, then there would have been fewer cancellations. We are still waiting for an official response from the Department for Transport. However, today at Gatwick Airport itself, they're not the chaotic scenes that we have seen at the start of April, and which has been experienced at several airports over the past week or so. EasyJet say passengers on cancelled flights have mostly been offered alternatives on the same day, and they have been given advance notice, so it means people aren't turning up to the airport and then discovering that their flight is delayed. EasyJet say the cancellations overall make up a very small proportion of their operations. Their schedule has been running at 94% over the past 7 days. It is still busy here. Lots of people are getting away from the holidays. The airport is advising that people arrive as soon as check-in for their flight is open.
Martha Fairley, thank you. Let's now join the travel expert Simon Calder, who has managed to jet off to Italy. He joins me now. Any chance, Simon, this will be sorted before the Easter weekend at the end of this week? Many people are trying to get away for their first holiday since the pandemic began.
Absolutely right, and as we heard from Martha just then, it is a very, very bleak picture for the people whose flights are cancelled. And let's just remember, while I was lucky, I got here on British Airways, which is cancelling even more flights than EasyJet. There's 50 cancellations today to and from Heathrow, its main base. EasyJet's at 32 cancellations, but those destinations include holiday spots like Sicily, Sardinia, Ibiza, Menorca, and there are about 5,000 EasyJet passengers who have not been on the flights that they originally booked. It's a very messy situation to the extent that I'm due to fly back tomorrow night on British Airways. I've spent £10 for an insurance policy, which is a flight back on Ryanair to Manchester, where I don't particularly want to go, lovely city though it is, just so I can make sure I can get back to the UK. And for travellers, as you say, to be in this position, right, for many families, it's the first opportunity they've had to travel for a couple of years. It's a miserable situation.
Yeah, absolutely. What we don't want to see, presumably, though, is security checks being speeded up and people not being vetted properly who are going to work in an airport.
Oh, sure, yes. I mean, it's a really serious issue, that. And I clearly, the government, I hope, is taking notice, and the Department for Transport will be responding and trying to accelerate the very important process of security vetting. Meanwhile, I'm afraid if you are travelling on British Airways or EasyJet, particularly from its main hub at Gatwick, then you have to understand what your rights are, and that means that if your flight is cancelled for whatever reason, then you are just setting off, excuse it, you are entitled to a new flight to your destination. I've been speaking to EasyJet passengers here who were due to fly into Milan and ended up being put on a plane to Verona, and the airline seemed to have neglected to tell them that first of all they're entitled to a flight to their actual destination on the day of travel, and secondly EasyJet has to hand them hundreds of pounds in cash compensation.
Goodness. Simon Calder, thank you very much. Enjoy the sunshine. The Chinese government has relaxed a very strict lockdown in Shanghai, which affected nearly 26 million people. There's been quite a backlash to the strict rules. This video shows some people taking to their balconies in protest against the lockdown. Let's get the latest from our Asia correspondent Debbie Edward, who's in Beijing. What's changed, and Debbie, why?
Well, officially there has been no change. Publicly, the government has been doubling down on its zero COVID policy, but privately, I think there's been some pressure from the central government to relieve the restrictions in areas where they're confident they can keep the numbers down. In the 7,000 communities set free so far, there hasn't been a positive case in more than 2 weeks, but there are still millions of people locked down at home or in these awful centralised isolation facilities, and there's been unprecedented protests and anger in a country where dissent is rare and even Shanghai and issue an advisory against all travel to China.
Debbie Edward, thank you very much. Thank you. Finally, this lunchtime, the locals at a Birmingham pub who were treated to an intimate Ed Sheeran gig of sorts. The global star joined in a boozy sing-along to the surprise of regulars. He even tried to pull a pint or two. With the details, here's Sally Biddle.
Not your average night at the pub with a pint shooting some pool. Oh no, your drinking buddy tonight is global superstar Ed Sheeran. Yes, that really is him joining a sing-along at the Roost pub in the Small Heath area of Birmingham. He dropped in with his mate, the rapper and pub local JK, much to the surprise of the Sunday night